So this video is a follow-up to the first Football Manager transfer window video that I put out the other day. I'll leave it linked in the eye above and all the other usual places if you haven't seen it, but to save time I'll assume that you understand the premise of the Football Manager thought experiment from the last video, and so I'm going to be going through the ins and outs that I would make this summer if I was the director of football at Manchester United, alongside explaining my thought process towards the end of the video, where you can then judge how good you think this rebuild would be. Also, for the NPCs who stumble across the video, don't comment this isn't Football Manager, just watch the start of the first video for the context. So let me start off quickly by going through the players we could sell. In order to dispel the myth that Manchester United have no money to spend, I'll just stick the players on the screen instead of going through them one by one. And so you can see that even if you factor out the money for Greenwood, Alvaro Fernandez, and also not selling Agate, we should still be able to bring in around £380 million this summer. The reported transfer budget is £100 million, which is usually what we do spend each summer, but even if that was lowered to around £60 million net, utilising the Football Manager rebuild strategy, we should still have between 440 to over £500 million to spend. Also factor in accountancy techniques with amortisation, and you could argue that it could be even more. So Manchester United don't just have money to spend, we have a shitload of money to spend, and so I'm going to work with a budget of around £500 million. However, when spending this money, what is my actual strategy for making this rebuild as good as it can possibly be? But before I carry on with the analysis, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to dragonjersey.com. They sent me over one of their retro shirts, this Manchester United 2006-2007 long sleeved home shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which may be my favourite jersey of all time, with Ronaldo's performance that season making it even more iconic. They've also got other retro and current season jerseys available, and depending on where you live you can get 7 to 12 day delivery time. If you use code Atlantis at checkout you will get a discount for a limited time, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. So these are the dates for the summer transfer window. For the mini transfer window before the Club World Cup, United should be at least getting deals agreed for Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro to move to Saudi Arabia. The rest may have to wait until after, but also you ideally want to be signing at least 2 or 3 players in this 10-day period alongside Matheus Cunha, so that the Bruno Fernandes transfer doesn't lead to too many inflated asking prices. And so these would be my first 3 signings that I'd go with alongside already signing Cunha. Obviously negotiations may delay certain transfers, but these would be my priorities because they do have release clauses. So I have gone with João Garcia, but he could move to either Arsenal or Barcelona soon. However, with Caio Santos, who was my first choice target, sustaining a recent long-term injury, I've just gone with Garcia for now. I'll do a separate video looking at some other options like Mike Maignan, Milinkovic-Savic and other alternatives, but for this particular video I'm just going to go with João Garcia and assume we can sign him. If not, you can just pivot to another option. The other 2 alongside Cunha do have release clauses. Oyedele's is reportedly lower than the initial £15 million buyback, which would have been £7.5 million with the 50% sell-on clause that I initially thought. As Fabrizio Romano has reported that it's actually a £5 million release clause, and not just for United but for any club who wanted him, and United would only get 40% of that apparently, and so you might as well just buy him back this summer, because you could sell him for a lot more maybe next summer than the £2 million you'd receive if he was sold this summer, and so you can use him for squad depth or just loan him out somewhere to increase his value, and then maybe sell him next summer or bring him back for next season. From June the 16th to the end of July, we should be selling most of those players on the transfer list. Deals like Højlund, Garnacho, Antony and Rashford may get delayed into August if we are negotiating transfer fees, but hopefully they don't, and during this period these are the players I would be going for. So that would be 9 first team outfield signings, 11 with the 2 goalkeepers, 12 signings with Oyedele, costing around £370 million. Now I know what you're thinking, I thought there was a budget of £500 million. And the answer is yes, there technically is. However, even though I was going for a Football Manager transfer window, when I initially planned it out I did try to make the transfer spend break even with the low end of player sales around £380 million. And so this is what I would call my foundational rebuild, but I am going to do a third part of this series on how you could use that extra £100 to £150 million that we initially set the budget at to potentially upgrade on these transfers and go for some more expensive, better quality targets, as well as looking at some young players who could potentially be signed pretty cheaply this summer loaned out and then either developed into first team players or eventually sold for profit on the books. However, let's go with this transfer window for now and I'll explain the logic behind the signings. So you've got two goalkeepers in Garcia and Fofana who have been very impressive this season, particularly this season when looking at their post-shot XG minus goals allowed and their crosses stop percentages. If you do want a breakdown of why I choose those two metrics specifically, check out the videos I've done on Manchester United's goalkeeper options. I'll try to remember to link one in the eye above. So Ruben Amorim would now have a ball-playing centre-back in Leonardo Balerdi, who compared to his current centre-back options is far better suited to playing that role on the edge of the box during the build-up phase, but I still think Amorim does need to make some tactical adjustments in terms of this phase of play, as well as elsewhere on the pitch, but I'll come on to that in a separate video. Now in the wing-back areas, Amad and Teo are perfect from an offensive point of view, having the ball carrying ability through the middle third and the output in the final third of wide attackers, with Vanderson not only an upgrade on Dalot offensively, but probably also defensively as well, being more of a front foot defender and so definitely being more of an asset in the press. And you've also got Patrick Dorgu as a pretty good understudy to have behind Teo, with Harry Amas and Diego Leon now able to go out on loan. Wide centre-backs you've got Mazraoui and De Ligt on the right, Euro or De Ligt on the left until Martinez returns, with Aiden Heaven as an understudy and Kokonki hopefully going out on loan as well. And Maguire is also there as a backup to Balerdi, but also as an alternative if Amorim wanted to use a deeper defensive shape against sides like Arsenal, Manchester City and Liverpool who may dominate possession for large periods, or even when we're chasing a goal and need Maguire as an aerial threat inside of the box. However, alongside this with some tactical creativity, I think Amorim could make the wide centre-backs a lot more effective offensively, and so I'll make a separate video analysing some tactical ideas for that. But central midfield, I think Lamine Camara and Ederson is an ideal midfield double pivot stylistically, but Amorim would also have Agate as an option in certain games who can be used as a pressing or a counter-pressing weapon, whilst Oyedele, if he didn't go out on loan, would have the physicality, athleticism, ball winning and progressive passing ability to offer sufficient strength in depth. In the front line you've got Alexander Solov as a Victor Gyökeres alternative, who is the sort of athletic and physical target man that Ruben Amorim does require for the build-up phase, but also someone who is significantly better technically when it comes to linking play with his back to goal, compared with what Amorim currently has with Rasmus Højlund, and probably also when compared with Liam Delap, as well as being someone who I think could potentially be a 15 to 20 goal a season striker in the Premier League, given his finishing and aerial ability inside of the box, with Liam Delap an excellent second choice, stylistically fitting the role of a centre forward and also having the skill set to potentially be used as an interior forward if needed as well. Matthias Cunha and Ryan Cherki either side have the exact blend of skill sets that you'd want. Cunha's ball carrying ability is a massive asset when transitioning the attack quickly through the middle third, whilst Cherki specialises at unlocking deep defensive shapes, and all round when it comes to goal scoring, ball progression and chance creation, Cherki and Cunha would be two of the best in the league in this particular role. Now even though Mainu and Mount could be used as slightly different options in those two interior forward roles, really and truly Mainu is kind of wasted if Amorim does stick with a midfield double pivot religiously and doesn't shift to more of a three-man midfield. Xerxes as well, as I've said before, doesn't really suit any role perfectly in Amorim's current brand of the 3-4-3, though his unique skill set when linking play between the lines and opening up space ahead could be used as a significant tactical weapon if used right against a particular opposition. Now I think we should be alright in terms of the number of homegrown players, but the squad is probably slightly too big, especially considering we don't have any European football. The issue is you can't really rely on Mason Mount for a full season, but you also can't move him on due to those injuries, and his salary stops alone as well. If Mainu could be used in a midfield double pivot, you could then move Agate on, but if not, I just don't see how Mainu really fits into the system, if Amorim is not deviating or changing at all, unless it's just from coming off the bench. And you could also say the same with Xerxes as well. In this situation, Oyedele you'd probably have to send on loan, but even then, a mid to long term injury to either Ederson or Kamara would mean that Agate would become a regular starter, and then you wouldn't have an industrious ball winner as a backup option. Potentially forget Fofana as a backup goalkeeper due to his limited game time without United having European football next season. However, you'd probably still need a better backup than Tom Heaton just in case Joan Garcia was injured for a sustained period of time. And so considering the potential budget remaining, you may have to look at selling players like Xerxes who don't fully fit into any role. Mainu you don't really want to sell unless you need the money just because of his potential. Maybe one of De Ligt or Mazraoui considering the squad depth that you have at wide centre-back, because I do think it's going to be essential for the build-up phase to bring in someone like Balerdi. Lenny Yoro and Aidan Heaven aren't going to be sold. Martinez you couldn't sell even if you wanted to because of his injury. Potentially Maguire would be a better option to move on than either De Ligt or Mazraoui, but then you'd have to let him go without bringing in any money due to his age, contract status and salary. And you could argue that despite his limited minutes, the actual benefit he brings the side over the course of a full season is worth having him in the squad. And so in the next episode I'm going to go through some amendments, potentially looking at some more expensive signings instead of the likes of Cherki, Delap, Sorloth and Garcia. But this is the outline of the squad that I'd build for Ruben Amorim this summer. It would work out financially. I think nearly everyone apart from maybe Joan Garcia, Teo and Cherki is definitely attainable for United. And I think the quality level in the squad should allow Amorim to at least get top 4 or 5, maybe even top 3, because remember, Ruben Amorim is meant to be an elite level coach, as we do eventually want to challenge and then win the title. And if you compared this squad to the rest of the league, I think we would be between 3rd and 5th in terms of individual quality and strength in depth, depending on how the other sides at the top of the league strengthen. So let me know what you'd rate this rebuild out of 10, and if you do want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to dragonjersey.com. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. Also, if you want to read any of my articles, you can get a 7-day free trial, or you can sign up to my in-game Instagram group chat, so I'll leave that linked on the end screen now as well.